a good number of people coming into the classroom as adults to become literate. They end up giving up. Same thing with the education of professors. Same thing with the majority and what we had from my days to today's. More than 30 years ago, you have to do your math. I was 17. If you do your math, you know how many years have elapsed since then. But since that time, many things have changed. And with the democratization process in the country, the Paulo Freire method came into action, and we all pay tribute to him. But we still have many challenges, as our minister Haddad was saying. We still have 10% of our young people and adults who were not educated adults, most of them in the northeastern region in Brazil. But we have to use all that knowledge so that people will not leave the classroom because they're scared with the situation, facing a new situation. It is education that cannot have the same expectations as others. And we cannot say that this is a pro forma thing because people simply have to scribble down their name. That's not what the whole thing is about. It has to be good quality. There has to be investment, not only money, but human investment, affectional investment, knowledge that has to be invested, love that has to be invested. That makes a difference. We need to establish a meeting between the teacher and the learner so that both can establish that link and have the real establishment of knowledge and of learning. That discovery of non-formal spaces of learning is something that led me to see that I had excellent professors before the formal space. My grandmother, she was the old lady that I told you taught me poetry, radio, soaps. I loved radio soap operas in Brazil. The Ivani Ribeiro novel, a huge Brazilian novelist. I was trained in history thanks to Ivani Ribeiro's novels. She had one that was known as Egypt, and I learned about the Egyptian civilization by reading that novel and by listening to her story about the pharaohs in Egypt. I was delighted to find out that there was a world that existed before me. I thought that we were the beginning of creation. I didn't have any idea of life before us, but that novel led me to see things, so I became passionate. I love history. I love reading about old history and the old ages, modern, contemporaneous story in Brazil. But my main interest is the old civilizations, Cordeo literature, and another course on theology of liberation. That was essential in my life to see the Brazilian, Latin American, progressive Leonardo da Silva. I never forget that I was already inside the nunnery, and I had a battle. I had to wage a battle. Yes, I know that I have 5 minutes. I know. I had to wage another battle inside the nunnery with the nuns. We have a minor problem. The interpreters gave us 5 minutes only. They will stop their work. So I would ask you to give us slightly more than 5 minutes so that the senator can compete and thank our workers. They've been working since early this morning doing their work. Wonderful work. But in any case, this is a message that I just received telling us that we have just a few minutes to complete our work. Obviously, we have some generosity by the interpreters, but I would ask you to please finish your statement in 5 minutes. Thank you. I understand because their work is very difficult. I presided over the COP8 in Curitiba, the Conference of the Parties on Biodiversity, and we were not able to go over time because they have a strong trade union, so we better stick to their time. So moving on to the conclusion already. What I wanted to say here, for the benefit of all, it is not for the gentlemen, for the ladies, it is for everybody, for educators, for professors, for decision makers, for managers, for opinion makers, authorities, everybody. What I wanted to say is that we do not have the right of not allowing education for young and adults as a human right. because we cannot have a perverse calculation that investing in these people is a waste of time, or as if it were placing money that you have somewhere else that could be used for children. Children ought to be our priority, but we should also consider adult and young people. Everybody has a right to dream. You cannot simply deprive any individual from that right, the right to dream, the right to have aspirations and aspire to a better life. You cannot deprive individuals from having access to that language, the written language. It is another universe that is needed by all individuals, by all persons. At times you feel, but you don't have a way of transforming what you feel into words. Sometimes you see things, but you don't have a way of translating that into symbols because we lack the knowledge of the letters, and that is a perversity. That's a perverse action against human beings that they have a right, just like anybody else, to have access to that form of knowledge. And I was saying that we are here in the middle of the Amazon forest in Brazil. It is the first time that the conference takes place in the southern hemisphere, and perhaps that is not by chance. To speaking of literacy for adults, perhaps brings to mind the need for speaking of literacy for civilization. Maybe we can place ourselves in a different place, saying they're illiterate, but we became the course. We became those transfers of that science, of the letters. Having received the literacy courses, as regards what? Well, the civilization that we're living through, the scarcity, the shortage of natural resources, the change in climate change, which is important, the possibility of protecting the earth. And Freire says that this is dedicated to the oppressed and to those who suffer with them in the fight by their side, overcoming problems in society to liberate human beings, and using education as a means of consciously shaping the person. We have to be educated for that civilization. What we want to have, the educator Cristóbal Buarque, who is here, as he said, we need to have a civilization inflection. Moraes says that at the very beginning, the change is only straying away from our main road. And we have to check, we have to see what deviation is the one that we want to have prosper. We want to prosper in sustainability, educating people in conditions of vulnerability because they're greatly affected, but also to become educated so that we can build, we will be able to build that civilization which stops destroying the forest. The Amazon is a place of challenge. Here we have 80% of the forest that is still preserved, that is still protected. In Brazil we have 280 peoples. 220 peoples, I stand correct, that speak 180 languages. It is an extraordinary cultural wealth to think of literacy, of individuals, of civilizations, to think of how we are going to develop with economic and social, cultural sustainability, environmental sustainability, and most of all, ethical sustainability. Everybody says that we already have technical responses to take care of most of our problems. What we need is the ethics that places our entire technology at the service of that ethical decision, that we want to have literate individuals, that we want people to have access to knowledge, entertainment, a worthy life, dignified life in Africa, in Brazil, in all places of the world. And I thank you for the opportunity, and I want to conclude by using just one phrase. I want leaders to do what Moraes Dias said, the dialogue of those who know, that educators think along these ways. There's scientific knowledge, but there's also narrative knowledge of the meeting between tradition and modernity, to know the scientific of the postulates that we had, and those who know how to see, how to perceive, and how to do things. We will find the responses for a world that is being prepared for the 21st century. I thank you for the opportunity, and I want to conclude by telling this story for those of you who know this chronicle. Here in the Amazon region, there was a group of researchers who came from a famous university in Argentina. I will mention Argentina because they're my friends, neighbors next to us, and they won't be offended. And all of a sudden, they went to the river delta, and they decided to set up a shop, and they set up the equipment down by the riverbank, and they started seeing the equipment. They checked the weather on the internet, and they said it won't rain. And someone simple from the forest said it will rain. And so in the middle of midnight, it rained. They had to go all the way up to the mountain and ask for protection in one of the houses. So the next day, they were very intrigued. How did you know that it was going to rain? And they said, well, we're not going to ask because we're the scientists, we're the researchers, and we have to ask, we have to know. And so they went to the simple person and they said, how did you know that it was going to rain? And he went to the river and he said, do you see the ant farm down there? Yes, I see. Do you see the ant farm up there? Yes, I see. Well, every time the ants that are in the ant farm down there go up to the ant farm up there, I know that it's going to rain, and that equipment never fails. Thank you very much.
I have 1 minute.